In this episode, we're going to practice English by talking about a topic that I think is quite relevant for many people nowadays: perfectionism. We're going to be reflecting on this topic today. I'm also going to be sharing with you some of my thoughts, my opinions about it, and of course, I'm going to be explaining here some useful vocabulary related to this topic that might be useful to you in your English. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Hey there, how's it going? Thiago here, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. In case you're new here, this podcast is intended to help intermediate and advanced learners of English communicate with more confidence, more accuracy, more clarity, and more awareness. If this sounds like something you want for yourself and your English, subscribe to the channel if you are on YouTube, or follow the show if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That way, you won't miss a single new episode. Also, before we get started with the topic today, let me remind you that I have a pronunciation course called The Sounds of English. This course teaches you the main sounds of the English language, the main connected speech patterns that you hear native speakers using in media, movies, TV series, podcasts, and in real life when you speak to them. This course will help you not only improve your pronunciation, but also improve your listening skills, because by becoming familiar with these connected speech patterns and sounds, you will be better able to understand native speakers when they speak fast English. If you want to learn more about the course, the link is here in the description of the video, also in the pinned comment below. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just look for the link in the show notes of this episode. So let's talk a little bit today about perfectionism. Look, I'm not an expert on mental health. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist. I'm just an English teacher, teaching you some English here with a topic. I am going to be sharing here my opinion, my thoughts on this, but keep in mind that these are just my opinions, my thoughts. And I also encourage you to do the same. As I ask you some questions here, as we talk about this topic, I want you to reflect on this topic in English, right? And maybe try to think of words and expressions that you can use when expressing your opinions about this topic in English. The main focus of this conversation today is for English practice. We are practicing English, but instead of teaching you something directly about English, we are actually going to have a conversation here about a topic, perfectionism in this case, and there will be some English teaching and learning in the process. So I have here, for us to get started with this conversation today, a couple of questions for us to reflect when it comes to perfectionism. First of all, do you think you are a perfectionist? Let me know in the comment section below. The first question is, what do you think perfectionism is? Try to define it in your own words. So, how would you define perfectionism? Feel free to share your definition here in the comment section below. So in my case, I would define perfectionism as this feeling of always trying to make everything perfect. No matter what you do, things have to come out perfect. The result, the end result, needs to be perfect. And I also feel like this is something very debilitating, because if something is good enough but not perfect, you are not happy with the end result. You are not happy with yourself. And many times it can be even paralyzing, because you might not even want to start a project or a task because you don't feel like you are in the perfect conditions yet to get started. So in a nutshell, I would define perfectionism as this feeling of wanting everything to be perfect. Now, here's a second question. What do you think is the line between perfectionism and a healthy amount of inspiration and motivation? The line here would be the limit or the boundaries. So what do you think is the line between perfectionism and a healthy amount of inspiration and motivation? I would answer this question like this. I would say that as long as your ambition and need for excellence, strive for excellence, doesn't debilitate you, doesn't interfere with your life in a negative way, that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for you to be ambitious, for you to strive for excellence, always trying to do your best, trying to come out with the best result possible that you can come out with or come up with, right? But if you do that at the expense of your mental health, your physical health, your social relationships, your family, that's not good. So I would say that the line is, it's okay to strive for excellence as long as it doesn't negatively impact other areas of your life or your own health. Think about these questions and answer them yourself. Okay, these are my perceptions, my opinions on this topic. What are yours? Okay. The next question I have here for reflection is, what do you think perfectionism stems from? Where do you think perfectionism comes from or stems from? Why or how does a person become a perfectionist? I would say that it depends on the person, the individual themselves, maybe the way your brain is wired, the way you view the world, your overall outlook on life. Also, I would say insecurity is a major factor. So if you are naturally insecure as a person, the tendency for you to be a perfectionist is higher. I actually believe that perfectionism stems from insecurity many times. And I would also say your history, your background, the family you were raised in. So how you were raised, how your parents talked to you when you were growing up, the relationship you had with them, with your family. So your history, your background, I think also influences whether you will be more of a perfectionist person or not. The next question here is, how could perfectionism wreak havoc on an individual? This is a nice expression, by the way, to wreak havoc. This means to negatively impact. Okay? So how could perfectionism wreak havoc on an individual? I think that it can be paralyzing. The person might not want to start a project or a task because of perfectionism. Maybe the situation, the conditions are not perfect yet to begin in the person's mind, so the person doesn't start anything. That is also a problem because a very perfectionist person might never get things done. Maybe the person has lots of ideas all the time, but the person never gets to implement those ideas because things are not perfect yet. So your ideas just remain ideas in your mind, but you struggle to actually come out or come up with something concrete, something tangible. I would say that perfectionism can be paralyzing, can be debilitating, and it can actually hinder your overall achievements in life. I believe that if you are extremely perfectionist, you won't achieve as many things as you could achieve if you are not so perfectionist. All right? But what about you? What do you think about that? Share your thoughts here in the comment section below. I have here a couple of sentences defining a perfectionist type of person. I think that there's some nice vocabulary here to define. So I'm just going to read these descriptions of what a perfectionist is. And first of all, think to yourself on your end there, if you agree with these definitions, with these statements. If you agree, why? If you disagree, why? And then I'm also going to maybe teach you some of the vocabulary here from these statements. So here's the first one. A perfectionist tends to lack self-compassion. So when you lack something, you don't have it. So self-compassion is basically self-love. You are good to yourself. You treat yourself well. So the statement says a perfectionist tends to lack self-compassion. They tend to not like themselves or treat themselves badly. What do you think about this? Do you agree with this? Think about that. The next one, a perfectionist tends to be worried about failure. I actually agree with this. I used to be more of a perfectionist when I was younger, especially. One of the fears was the fear of failing. What if I create something and put it out there and it fails, it blows? Then a perfectionist tends to constantly seek approval from others. This is a big deal, I would say. Yeah. So you seek approval from other people. A perfectionist tends to strive for unattainable goals. Nice piece of vocabulary here. Yeah, first of all, strive for. When you strive for something, you pursue it. You work towards that. So you strive for it. An unattainable goal. An unattainable goal is a goal that is impossible to attain or to achieve. It's so far-fetched, it's so out there, so unrealistic that it's unattainable. It's not possible to be achieved. A perfectionist tends to be overly focused and self-critical. Self-critical, like you criticize yourself way too much. I suck. I'm bad at this. This is not for me. I'm not good at this. How can I be so dumb? How can I be so stupid? You see? Overly self-critical. Oops, I did it again. Also, a perfectionist tends to set unrealistic standards. So not only unattainable goals, but also unrealistic standards. Maybe a perfectionist standards are just too high. Therefore, the goals become unattainable. A perfectionist tends to be hard on oneself. This is a nice word here, oneself. You can say oneself when you want to say someone, a person. It doesn't really matter who. But oneself is a more formal, more advanced word for someone. You can say oneself. So a perfectionist tends to be hard on oneself. In other words, if you are a perfectionist, you tend to be very hard on yourself. And a perfectionist tends to be worried about getting things wrong, which is connected to worried about failure, as we just discussed. So what do you think about these statements? Do you agree with them? Think about them. And if you want to share something here in the comment section below, do share, all right? This is a conversation that I'm having with you now, okay? I'm explaining some vocabulary, but I'm also talking to you about this. So moving on, I actually watched a video about this, and I thought it was really interesting. The speaker in this video talks a little bit about perfectionism, what it is, the kinds of perfectionists there are, and also some tips to overcome being so perfectionist. So first of all, the speaker says that perfectionism means striving for the need for yourself to be perfect in various aspects of life. And it was also my definition at the beginning of the video. You try to do everything perfectly. Also, the speaker says that perfectionism involves setting incredibly high and unattainable standards. So the higher your standards are, the more likely you will be disappointed, because it's hard to please a person who has super high standards all the time. Look, I'm not saying that you have to have no standards. I think it's good to have certain standards to expect things to happen at a certain level, but we just have to be careful, I would say. We have to be careful not to have incredibly high standards to the point that it's just impossible to attain what we want to attain, or even make us feel pleased or satisfied with our results. Then the video also mentions that a perfectionist is prone to being overly critical and focused on others' perceptions. In other words, how people will perceive you, what people will think of you. All right? Now, this is a nice word. A perfectionist is prone to. When you are prone to something, you have the tendency to do that thing. You are prone to it. And then here's another one. Perfectionism can be debilitating. So something debilitating, something that limits you, impairs you to, let's say, function properly in the world. Yeah? So you are not what you could become, or you don't become what you could become, because perfectionism can be incredibly debilitating. So you don't do the things you know you should be doing, but you don't do them. Then, too much of the need to be in control can start wreaking havoc on our minds and bodies. That's a big deal too. I thought it was interesting that the video talked about that, the need to be in control. I certainly struggle with this. Personally, I like to be in control of things as much as possible. I like to be in control of the situation, of what happens in my life. So when I feel like I'm not in control, it can be incredibly stressful to me. I feel like I have been coping with this much better now as I'm older, but especially when I was younger, that was definitely an issue. The need to be in control all the time. I'm still working on it, but this is definitely something that applies to me. What about for you? Do you always feel the need to be in control? Let me know. And then the speaker in the video defines the types of perfectionists, all right? According to the speaker, there are 3 types of perfectionists. So let me read the definitions here and see if maybe you are one of these. The first one is a self-oriented perfectionist. These people tend to set high, unrealistic goals for themselves. Okay, so if you're always setting high, unrealistic goals for yourself, you're probably a self-oriented perfectionist. Then we have the second type, which is the other-oriented perfectionist. This person holds other people around to an exceptionally high standard. So for some reason, you just put people around you on a pedestal. You view them as superior or more superior than you, and usually you view yourself as inferior. I've already experienced this in class, for example. I teach many students. I've been doing that for many years now. And sometimes there were some students in the past who told me in class something like, "Oh, Thiago, when I'm here talking to you in English in the class, I feel so relaxed, so comfortable. It feels great. I can communicate. But when I have to speak to my boss at work in English, I don't know what happens. I just forget the words and I freeze up and I paralyze. And suddenly I feel like I can't speak." It's interesting, yeah, the perceptions that people have, but probably this person could be another oriented perfectionist. There are certain people in this person's life that for some reason the person just holds them to an exceptionally high standard. Oh, it's my boss. Oh, it's the president of the company. And then you freeze up. Look, my personal take on this, I would say that this is BS, in my opinion. You know why I think it's BS? Because they're just people. Your boss, your supervisor, your manager, the CEO of a company, whatever, they're all people. People like you, like me, they suffer from the same existential problems, yeah? They question pretty much the same existential things that we do. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? That kind of stuff. What is my purpose in the world? Everybody worries about these things. They need to sleep like you. They need to eat and drink like you. They need to go to the bathroom just like you. To me, it's just BS. Once I realized that no matter what position a person has, the person is just a person like me, that has made me more comfortable to speak to anyone. So nowadays, I feel like I can talk to anyone because I'm just talking to another person like me, all right? Even though people are different, they are fundamentally the same, all right? But I know that this is not an easy feat. It's not something easy to pull off, yeah? It takes a lot of mental work, emotional labor, yeah, for you to get to this point where it doesn't really matter if you're talking to a lawyer, a doctor, or whoever, you know? You're talking to a person. Then coming back to the video here, the speaker says that there's also the socially prescribed perfectionist. This is the person that feels the pressure to be perfect and is constantly seeking approval from others. So, what kind of perfectionist are you? The self-oriented perfectionist, the other-oriented perfectionist, or the socially prescribed perfectionist? But then the same video also provides us with some tips, yeah, to overcome this. We have already defined a little bit of perfectionism, what it is, the types of perfectionists. Now, what about some tips? Instead of trying to deny or hide our imperfections, acknowledge and shine a light on them. Notice self-judgmental thoughts and practice self-compassion. When you're being hard on yourself, see if there are words of kindness or encouragement you can offer yourself. So I really like this word, acknowledge. So when you acknowledge something, you recognize it, you admit that it's there, it exists, and shine a light on your imperfections. So when you shine a light on something, you reveal it. You don't try to hide it or conceive it. You make it publicly visible. So shine a light on your imperfections. Don't try to hide your imperfections. It's okay to maybe not know the answer to something. It's okay to say in a meeting, look, I don't know. Can you tell me more about this? It's okay. All right? Or it's okay to mess up sometimes, or to have what I call some brain farts from time to time, make a mistake, right? Don't be afraid to try things. There's so much that we can learn from getting things wrong, as long as we're able to see them as a stepping stone to our growth. And don't be afraid to fail. Perfectionism creates the idea that failure is the worst thing that can happen to us. But it's not. When these thoughts arise, take a deep breath and a step back from that overcritical mind. So a couple of nice words here. First of all, failing or making mistakes can be a good thing if you view your mistakes as a stepping stone to your growth. A stepping stone is a transitional period or moment that you are going through that will propel you to something better, something more improved, more enhanced. All right? So it's a stepping stone. Also, I really like this part that says that perfectionism creates the idea that failure is the worst thing that can happen to us. We internalize this from a very early age, actually. Think about kids at school. I've already met some students who were really afraid of scoring badly on a test. And I've even met students who, when they took like a B, for example, on the test, they felt bad about themselves because it wasn't an A. From an early age, I think we internalize that. Maybe parents also have something to do with it. Maybe if a parent puts a lot of pressure on the kid to always get straight A's or 10s, when that kid gets a B or a 9, the kid thinks that is not good enough. It's not perfect. It's this idea that mistakes or failure is the worst thing that can happen to us, but it's not. Life is full of trying things out, things not working out. You mess up here, you mess up there, you make a mistake here, you make another mistake there. Sometimes you need to make the same mistake hundreds, thousands of times until you finally learn. And with all these trials and errors, eventually we get some wins in our lives. We get some things right. And when we get those things right, we usually get very good results. But life is this constant trial and error in many areas, maybe in every area. All right? And I really like this word, when these thoughts arise, like when they come to the surface. All right? And then the video ends with this very nice line. If you don't take anything from this conversation today, take away this. Lastly, practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes progress. The saying is usually practice makes perfect, right? But instead of thinking that way, that practice makes perfect, why not think this way? Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress. It's much better for you to feel like you are progressing, like you are moving in the right direction, getting one small win at a time, getting 1% better every day, than maybe reaching for perfection. Yeah? So don't reach for perfection. Just try to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday, than you were last week, than you were last year. We are constantly evolving, yeah? Always learning, getting better, refining our skills, our thoughts, sharpening our opinions. So practice doesn't make perfect, it makes progress. So that's a little bit about this topic that I wanted to talk to you about. So basically today I just wanted to have this conversation with you about perfectionism, how I view perfectionism, how I would define it. We went over here some tips on how to overcome this, all right? And also we learned some things about the different types of perfectionists and some vocabulary in the process. But let me know in the comment section below if you have any other thoughts about this topic, anything that I didn't mention here, either because it didn't occur to me or because I just forgot to mention. Let me know here in the comment section. We can continue this conversation here in the comments. And before we wrap up today's episode of the podcast, I have here a question from a viewer on YouTube. This is going to be the question for the Learner's Corner portion of the episode here. So check it out. Hi guys, I have a question. I'm around B1 level of English. I have some problems with building sentences. What do I mean is that I know a lot of vocabulary, but when I'm building a sentence, those words just disappear from my mind. When someone is talking, I know them and understand, but when I want to use them, they are just gone. What can I do about that? I like to talk with some AI, but all my vocabulary just disappear when it's time to talk. Look, reading or comment here, I would say that there are a couple of things that you can do in order to become better at building sentences in English. Just by reading your comment, I would bet, or at least guess, that you are a person who consumes a lot of English already. Maybe you watch a lot of videos in English, you listen to podcasts in English. Maybe you listen to a lot of English already, but you consume it in a more passive way. And I get the feeling that you listen to English more. So your listening might be very good, but the other skills are not there yet. You should be paying attention to the other skills. For example, writing. I mean, reading your comment here, I can spot some mistakes already in the writing. For example, I'm around B1 level of English. But you need to use a preposition here. I'm at around B1. You see? I'm at around B1, or I am a B1 level learner, a B1 level student. You can say something like that. What else? The capitalization of the words, like I here needs to be capitalized, for example, but you didn't write it that way. What else? Those words just disappear from my mind. You just misspelled the word disappear. Disappear doesn't have double S. It has one S, but double P. What else? Look at this. What do I mean is that I know a lot of vocabulary. What do I mean is a question, because, do is an auxiliary verb. But the way you are writing the sentence here is not really a question, it's just a sentence. So you should have eliminated or cut out the do. Oh, not to mention some of the punctuation as well here. So I would say focus on writing more, get into the habit of writing in English more, and when it comes to building sentences, deliberately study some grammar. Get a grammar book or find some websites online that teach grammar, that have grammar exercises online that you can do. But I really think that you will benefit by being a little bit more intentional and deliberate with your studies. Guys, I really believe that for many people, maybe for most people, just consuming English a lot, just listening to lots of English, watching lots of videos is not enough. Maybe for some people that is enough to already internalize the rules of the language and get the pronunciation right, especially if those people start consuming English early, like very young. But if you haven't started learning English relatively young, you started relatively late in your life, already maybe as a teenager or even adult, I really recommend you actually study the language. Aside from consuming the language, watching many things and listening to many things, I really recommend you actually take time to study the language, study the grammar, write, get into the habit of writing. If you can, maybe enroll at a formal course, at a formal language school, or hire a private teacher to help you. But you need to study more formally, I would say. It's the combination. Some people only study formally and they don't consume enough English, real media. So they might know a lot of the rules of the English. They might be very good at reading and writing, but they can't understand or speak at all. That's bad. But on the other hand, we also have people who have always consumed lots of content Their listening might be very good, but their reading, not so much. Their writing, not so much. Or the speaking, also not so much. Yeah, but the listening is good. So, try to balance out all the skills. That's what I would say. But thanks for the comment. I really appreciate that. If you guys want to send me a question or share maybe your story here on the show, you can send me an email by going to hello.teacherthiago@gmail.com. You can also send me an audio message by going to speakpipe.com/English with Thiago. Or you can just leave me your comment, your story here under this video in the comment section below. And then if I find it interesting enough, I'm going to share it on a future episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation today about perfectionism. And don't forget to check out my pronunciation course, The Sounds of English. You can also check out my 2 other products, my conversation club, where we meet once a week to practice conversation together for about 1 hour and a half on Zoom. And also check out my private community, where you get to interact with me and other members on a regular basis and have access to some really cool activities and perks. I'm Thiago. I'm signing off. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and I'll be talking to you very soon in the upcoming episode. Bye-bye.